There is a deep, unsettling silence over the African savannas. A silence where roars once echoed, roars that tore through the darkness of night, challenging rivals and defining the borders of a kingdom. That sound was the beating heart of the wild. Now that heart is slowing. That magnificent roar is giving way to a bitter silence. The lion, Panthera leo. He is more than just a predator. He is a living symbol of power, nobility, and the untamed spirit of Africa. For millennia, he has sat upon the throne as the king of beasts in cultures, art, and mythology. But this majestic image stands in tragic contrast to the brutal reality on the ground. Today, this iconic predator is fighting a silent battle for existence. This is not a simple cycle of nature. This is the story of a deadly war between the planet's most iconic predator and its most dominant species. In this documentary, you will witness the fall of kings who had names, who had stories, like Cecil, a victim of a trophy hunter's pride,
and like the wise Queen Bibi, poisoned for revenge.
Their tragedies are the echoes of a much larger war being waged across Africa. So, why are the savannas falling silent? How is the king of beasts losing his throne? To give a voice to the silent scream of the African lion, this documentary delves into the dark world of poaching, the bloody economy of trophy hunting, and the tense front lines between humans and lions. This is not just a story of extinction, but also one of resistance and hope. But first, we must understand the speed at which this kingdom is collapsing. In numbers. To understand the fall of the kingdom, we must first see the scale of the loss. The numbers tell a tragedy. Every digit represents a silenced roar. A century ago, an estimated 200,000 lions roamed the African savannas. Today, it is believed that only 20,000 to 25,000 of these magnificent predators remain in the wild. This is a staggering decline of approximately 90% from their historical peak, an almost complete annihilation. And this decline is not slowing. It is accelerating. In just the last 3 lion generations, or about 21 years, the population has reportedly decreased by 40 to 43%. Lions are disappearing, not just in number, but in territory. Once ranging across southern Europe, the Middle East, and almost all of Africa, the species is now confined to a mere 6 to 8% of its historical range. Their kingdoms have dissolved before their eyes. Lions have become extinct in 26 African countries. Those that remain are fighting for survival in fragmented, isolated pockets of land, often only within the protective boundaries of national parks and reserves. The International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, classifies lions as vulnerable. But this global label creates a dangerous illusion, as it averages 2 completely opposite realities. On one hand, there are a few southern countries like Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. Here, thanks to intensive, often fenced and well-funded management, lion populations are stable, even showing a 12% increase. But these few success stories mask the catastrophe in the rest of the continent. Outside of these 4 countries, lion populations across Africa have declined by an estimated 60% in the last 2 decades. In reality, the lion's situation is a crisis of regional extinction. The lions of West Africa, with only about 400 individuals remaining, are classified as critically endangered and are on the brink of being functionally extinct. The populations in Central and East Africa are declining at a rate that would qualify them for endangered status. So the vulnerable label creates a false sense of security, hiding the severity of the crisis in the regions that need the most urgent intervention. The kingdom is not collapsing all at once, but piece by piece, in silence. So who are the visible and invisible enemies causing this collapse? The first of these enemies causing the kingdom's collapse is a sinister and ruthless killer that moves in the shadows: the poacher. The first front in this war is the bushmeat trade. The impact of this illegal activity on lions is twofold. First, it decimates the lion's natural prey, like antelope and buffalo, driving them to starvation. Hungry lions are forced to approach human settlements and attack livestock, which in turn fuels human-lion conflict. The second, more direct impact comes from the simple but deadly wire snares set to catch game. Lions, being natural scavengers, are drawn to the scent of animals caught in these traps and become ensnared themselves. The wire tightens around their neck or leg, causing a slow and agonizing death. The victims often perish from starvation, dehydration, or their injuries. The story of Fatima, a 10-year-old lioness from Mozambique's Niassa Reserve, is a tragic example of this insidious threat. Fatima was caught in a wire snare, originally set for an antelope. But for the poacher who found her, this wasn't an accident, but an opportunity. Direct commercial poaching of lions has increased at an alarming rate in recent years. The main driver of this illicit trade is the demand for lion bones as a substitute for increasingly rare tiger bones in traditional Asian medicine. Products like bone wine, along with jewelry made from claws and teeth, are marketed by organized crime networks stretching from Africa to Asia. The poacher who found Fatima tried to kill her with a spear for her skin, claws, and bones, all valuable on the Asian market. She fought fiercely and managed to escape, but the spear had pierced her lung. By the time the conservation team found her, it was too late. Fatima died from her injuries. Her death is a painful illustration of how bushmeat poaching quickly morphs into targeted trafficking to feed the market in Asia. Another method used by poachers is even more brutal and indiscriminate: poison. Using cheap agricultural pesticides, they lace animal carcasses and wait for lions to feed on them. This method is so effective that a single poisoned carcass can wipe out an entire pride and every other scavenger that feeds on it, from vultures to hyenas. The images of poisoned lions found in Mozambique's Limpopo National Park, with their faces and paws hacked off, are chilling proof of this brutality. Wire snares, poisoned carcasses, and crime syndicates working for the Asian market, these are the silent killers rotting the lion kingdom from within. But the hunt for profit is not the only war waged against the lion. A more intimate and brutal demand exists for body parts used in dark rituals. It was this dark trade that sealed the fate of a king named Tao and his entire pride. In November 2019, Sunward Farm in the Limpopo province became the stage for this brutality. The targets were the farm's protector, a 10-year-old male lion named Tao, and his 4 lionesses, Tana, Jade, Zuri, and Nala. The poachers tossed chicken carcasses injected with poison over the farm's electric fences. This simple yet diabolical trap brought an end to an entire family. After nearly half an hour of agonizing convulsions, all 5 lions fell silent.
But for the killers, the real work began in the silence of death. Under the cover of darkness, they cut through the fences and with machetes in hand descended upon the lifeless bodies of the lions, now unable to defend themselves. By morning, a horrific scene remained. 20 paws and 5 jaws had been brutally hacked away. This was not an isolated incident. The massacre at Sunward Farm was the 3rd similar attack that month. Other kings, like Jarvis at the Ritualistic Nature Reserve, had been subjected to the same ritualistic butchery. This is a systematic chain of attacks targeting conservation areas. The motive behind this systematic butchery is chilling: to supply a dark trade in traditional magic, locally known as muti. It is a hunt for the lion's very essence, the perverse belief that its body parts carry its power. The paws are taken for dominance, the jaw for authority, qualities to be ground into potions by the merchants of superstition for their clients. And so, the king of the savannah is butchered and reduced to a set of ingredients for a brutal superstition. Poisoned carcasses and machetes. These are the tools of killers serving this dark trade. However, the enemies lions face are not only those lurking in the shadows of organized crime. Sometimes, the enemy is a neighbor, living just on the other side of the fence. The bloodiest battles are fought on visible borders, between people and lions, both struggling to survive. This is a tragedy where revenge, deep-rooted traditions, neglect, and desperation intertwine. And no story illustrates this war more painfully than the rise and fall of Kenya's legendary marsh pride. This is not the story of a single conflict, but of a years-long campaign of annihilation. There is a cultural dimension to this conflict. For the Maasai people, the lion is both a symbol and a deadly enemy to their livestock. In the past, a young man's path to proving his manhood within the community was to kill a lion with a spear, following the tradition of Alamayo. This bloody rite of passage cost the lion its life, but earned the warrior's social status. But while these traditions have faded, the killing continues, motivated now by something far more stark and modern: revenge for a lost cow. And the target of this modern revenge was no ordinary pride. It was a dynasty. The pride was founded by 4 legendary lionesses who went down in history as the Golden Four. They were the mothers of the legendary Notch Coalition, the largest lion coalition Africa has ever seen, a force that came to rule the Mara. But the pride they came from, the marsh pride itself, was under systematic attack. The targets were its matriarchs and their young. The casualties mounted over the years. In 2010, Red, one of the pride's most accomplished hunters, was speared to death in a conflict over livestock. Then in 2012, 2 of the other great matriarchs, Lispy and White-Eye, both disappeared, believed to have also been killed as the conflict with humans intensified. Then, in December 2015, the final and bloodiest act of this long war unfolded. The pride attacked cattle that had been grazed illegally deep inside the reserve. The retaliation was swift. Herders laced one of the dead cattle carcasses with carbofuran, a potent pesticide that paralyzes the nervous system. The result was a massacre. 8 lions that ate from the poisoned carcass began to die in horrific agony. While veterinary teams managed to save 5 of them with a swift response, the attack still claimed 3 key members of the pride. The first victim was the 17-year-old wise matriarch Bibi, one of the last living members of the legendary Golden Four, who had mothered Notch's legendary sons. Eyewitnesses found her lying on her side, foaming at the mouth, racked by convulsions. The massacre also struck the next generation of leaders, the daughters of the legendary Notch. The courageous leader Sienna died from the poison, while her surviving sister Charm lost her own son Alan in the attack. This wasn't a conflict. It was a calculated act of bioterrorism. So, was this just the fault of the herders? The answer is complex. Conservationists say no, pointing to a larger story of poor governance, corruption, and the desperation of the Maasai people, squeezed onto their own lands by privatization and unable to sustain their growing herds. But to understand the systemic pressure is not to excuse the act itself. The decision to use poison, a quiet, indiscriminate killer that inflicts an agonizing death, is not the same as a herdsman defending his cattle with a spear. It is a choice that transforms a desperate victim of the system into its brutal executioner. This was a systemic disaster, certainly, but one carried out by human hands. Another face of the conflict lies in neglect. The legendary 19-year-old Loonkito in Kenya's Amboseli ecosystem was one of the oldest known wild lions and a symbol of resilience. But a severe drought had decimated his natural prey, and the old king was starving. This was a preventable tragedy. Conservation authorities and local groups knew he was old, weak, and struggling to hunt, yet no intervention was made. Instead of providing aid, the authorities chose to wait, allowing a slow decline to turn into an inevitable conflict. Old and exhausted, Loonkito did what any starving predator would do. He entered a livestock enclosure in a desperate final attempt to survive. The outcome was brutal and inevitable. He was speared to death by herders. His death was one of 10 lion killings in the Amboseli region that week, stark proof that the policy of human-wildlife coexistence had completely failed. Loonkito was desperate, yes, but those who stood by and watched him die were just as responsible as the hands that held the spears. Whether through calculated revenge or systemic neglect, lions are losing their desperate fight for survival against the human world. But there are also those who market this conflict as a sport, a luxury commodity, and a twisted form of conservation. This is where we encounter the most controversial system of all, one that has turned the death of lions into an industry: trophy hunting. On paper, the arguments sound logical, even noble. The tens of thousands of dollars paid by hunters are claimed to finance activities like anti-poaching. It's argued that it protects vast lands from agriculture and benefits local people. And most importantly, they claim that only old, post-breeding males are targeted to avoid harming the population. But how much of this money goes to protecting lions? How much reaches the people who share the land with them? The answer? Almost none. Studies have proven that a comical figure of only 3% of this revenue ever reaches local communities. The real lie is hidden in the ecological cost. Hunters don't want old lions. They want the biggest,
healthiest males with the most magnificent manes. In other words, the leaders who carry the strongest genes for the future of a pride. And when a king is killed, the kingdom is thrown into chaos. A bloody power struggle for the throne begins, and the new male who takes over methodically slaughters all the cubs that are not his own. This is infanticide. A single bullet, a single act of pride can wipe out an entire generation. To understand the ruthlessness of this industry, we must look at the bloody history of Zimbabwe's Hwange National Park. The symbol of this modern tragedy was a lion the whole world came to know in 2015, Cecil. He was Hwange's charismatic black-maned leader. At 13 years old, he was part of an Oxford University research project and a favorite among tourists. But for hunters, he was just a prize to be hung on their walls. An American dentist paid approximately $55,000 for this prize. Cecil was betrayed by the people he trusted. In the dark of night, he was lured with a carcass outside the boundary of his protected park. He didn't die when he was shot with a crossbow. For nearly 40 hours, he tried to escape his hunters, wounded and in agony. They found his trail the next morning and ended his life with a rifle. To hide his identity, they ripped off his GPS collar, cut off his head, and skinned him. His death wasn't a hunt, it was a planned assassination. And this assassination was not just an end, but the beginning of a horrific domino effect. Cecil's legacy rested on the shoulders of his son, Zanda. But this was not fate. It was the industry's bloody scenario. First, Zanda's coalition partner, Sinanjeni, was killed by a trophy hunter, weakening the pride. Then, exactly 2 years after his father's death, Zanda fell into the same dishonorable trap, lured with bait and killed by a trophy hunter. And that bullet didn't just kill Zanda. It destroyed an entire family. The two lionesses, now without a protector, desperately approached a village to feed their cubs and were shot and killed by the Problem Animal Control Unit. Cecil's grandchildren, now motherless, waited for their mothers to return, hidden in the bushes, and eventually starved to death. This bloody legacy followed Hwange's other noble families. Mopani, another king of the park, as magnificent as Cecil, was killed at the age of 12 in 2021, again with the same method, lured outside the park with bait and shot with an arrow. Mopani's coalition partner was Seduli, and he too had been killed by a trophy hunter in 2019. This was a genocide, and Seduli's death was a sign of who the next victim would be, his son, Netsai. Seduli's legacy was taken up by his two sons, the brothers Netsai and Humba. Together they formed a new coalition and became the protectors of a pride composed of Cecil's daughters. With their arrival, a sense of security and stability returned, and 12 new cubs from Cecil's bloodline were born. In Hwange, after so much death, a moment of hope blossomed. But hope doesn't last long in Hwange. First, Netsai was killed by a trophy hunter, leaving Humba as the sole protector. Then, in a final, devastating blow in June of 2024, Humba was also hunted and killed. At the hands of these hunters, an entire pride was left defenseless, its future wiped out. The Oxford University research confirms this endless massacre. Of 62 tracked lions, the deaths of 24 were due to trophy hunting in most cases. But the absolute nadir of this industry is canned hunting, where a lion is born in a cage only to be shot in an enclosure. This is not conservation. It is the definition of industrial brutality. These farms in South Africa are not habitats. They are factories where every second of a lion's life, from the moment of its birth to the sale of its bones, is monetized. The story always begins the same way. A cub is forcibly torn from its mother's warmth and protection, its eyes barely open to the world. The first few months of its life are spent in the arms of strangers, a cute prop for a photograph. It learns the sound of human voices, not the roar of its own kind. It learns to be docile, not how to hunt. When it grows and loses its cute appeal, it becomes an accessory in fake adventures called lion walks, paraded alongside tourists. Every day, every hour, it is captive. It can never run free, never choose its own territory, never be a real lion. And finally, when its powerful body and mane are deemed impressive enough for a hunter, it is taken on its final journey. It is released into a fenced enclosure, an execution arena from which there is no escape. This is not a hunt. There is no opponent. There is only the barrel of a gun, pointed by the human it has been taught its entire life to obey. For this helpless animal, often drugged or starved, the end comes in seconds. But even after its spirit leaves its body, the assault on its dignity is not over. The hunter takes his trophy, but the rest of the lion is also a commodity. Its skeleton is carefully harvested to be sold to the bone markets in Asia. Every last drop of profit is squeezed from the body that was exploited its entire life. This is not conservation. It is the definition of industrial brutality. From the poacher's snare to the trophy hunter's bullet, from a herder's desperate spear to the cold efficiency of the killing farms, the assault on the lion seems endless. It's a tide of brutality that threatens to wash away the last of these kings. But this is not just a story of loss. This is also a story of hope and resistance. The silent screams of fallen kings like Cecil, Netsai, and Humba have not gone unheard. They have ignited a new resistance in the hearts of people fighting to protect the savannas across Africa. In this darkness, there are also lights of hope, and these lights are rising in the hands of the true heroes on the ground. The most successful conservation strategies are based on a simple truth. A living lion must be made more valuable to local communities than a dead one. Turning lions from a liability into an asset is the only way to coexist. One of the most powerful examples of this philosophy is the Lion Guardians program. They are turning potential enemies into the strongest allies. Programs like the Ruaha Carnivore Project in Tanzania also share the rewards of conservation, not just the cost. Predator-proof bomas have been extremely successful in preventing lion attacks. GPS collars work as early warning systems, and specialized camera traps like Poacher Cam create a proactive line of defense against poachers. And most promising of all, these efforts are showing results. In places like Rwanda's Akagera National Park and Malawi's Majestic Wildlife Reserve, lions have been successfully reintroduced to lands where they had gone extinct. Their roars now echo once more across lands that had fallen silent. These success stories offer a beacon of hope for the future of lions. But these efforts will not be enough without global will and support. The war is not yet over. That deep silence and anger you feel after watching these stories, these lives, these brutal ends? It is a universal feeling that touches all of us beyond borders. This grief is a part of being human. But the purpose of this documentary is not to leave you in that grief. Its purpose is to turn that emotion into a power, into an action. Because these stories echo not just in the savannas of Africa, but also in our own consciences. Cecil, Bibi, Loonkito, and all the fallen kings, they were not just lions. They were proof of how fragile our relationship with our planet is. Their tragedy is a painful warning that when we fail to protect even one of nature's most magnificent symbols, we are in fact endangering our own future. And so, this call is to you. Perhaps none of us can go to the savannah alone and save a lion, but there is something all of us can do. As Ali ibn Abi Talib said, if you cannot stop an injustice, at least tell everyone about it. Our job is this, to tell the world about this injustice. That is why you should subscribe to our channel and follow us. Let's grow this channel together so that the story of these noble animals can be heard with a louder voice. Sharing this video is not just a click. It is to announce an injustice. It is to ensure that these kings did not die in vain, and that their silent screams are heard. The king of the savannas is not just Africa's heritage, but the shared heritage of the entire planet. His roar is the proclamation that a wild and free world still exists. To silence that proclamation is to lose a piece of our own soul forever.